Hello, everyone, and welcome to Imbibe Live Online, part of Global Bar Week. This is Jacopo Mazzeo, news editor at Imbibe. Today, I'm really looking forward to exploring the important issue of sustainability with an amazing panel of experts. But before we begin, just a quick reminder that we will be taking audience questions throughout the entire session today. So please make sure that you keep them coming by entering them in the box or to the right of your screen. We also have a quick poll which you can access still on the right of your screen. It's just about the areas of sustainability you have been investing more for your business. We will give the results towards the end of the session, so make sure that you enter the poll. So let me introduce you to our guests today. We have Jonathan Raggett, Managing Director at Red Carnation Hotels. Kate Sannell, Director of Programs and Engagement at B-Lab UK. Nathan Larkin, Founder at Speaking Code. Louisa Dodd, Project Manager at the Sustainable Restaurant Association. And Alessio Giorgetti, Head of Development at Mercato Metropolitano. So welcome, everyone. So sustainability is actually quite a broad topic. So before we really dive in, I would like to ask Kate of B-Lab UK and Louisa of the Sustainable Restaurant Association if they can give us a brief overview of the issue. So perhaps you, Kate, can kick off, and Louisa, you could help us understand how everything applies to the hospitality industry, and you can also both tell us a little bit about what your organizations are about. Okay, so over to you, Kate.
Great, thank you. So sustainability is a big, gnarly word. I think it's one of the words that is incredibly useful, but it's also overused and doesn't mean a lot to some extent. I actually don't like using the word sustainability. I like the idea of it just being embedded into the business of the way that you operate. And the reason why I think that is that actually every part of your business needs to be responsible, sustainable, impactful. And if you take every part, you can easily apply those different elements. So whether it's the way that you're owned, whether it's the wages that you pay, whether it's the provenance of the food that you supply, whether it's how you serve the drinks or what the packaging is that you either give the drinks out in or the food in, how you get the food to you or the drinks to you, and then how you partner and collaborate with other organizations. So it's about every part of the business, and that's essentially what we believe. So I work for B-Lab, which is a charity behind the B Corporation movement, and the B Corporation movement is trying to, broadly speak, reinvent capitalism. So it's pretty bold, big, bold aims. But what we recognize is that business is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. And if we're able to harness that to be a force for good, we're going to be able to create change. And we think that the way that business has operated in the past isn't necessarily reflective of how it should operate in the future. And so there are huge opportunities in the way that you run your business to have a positive impact on people and planet. So it's a certification of good, responsible, ethical business. We've also changed legislation across the US, in Italy, Colombia, Ecuador. It's pending in Argentina and Australia. And we're trying to create as much change as possible. So some B Corps that you might recognize are Innocent Drinks or Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's or Cook, Freestar. So a real spectrum of businesses from any sector, actually from any size, any location, and everyone can be part of using the word sustainably more effectively. So embedding it into every part of their business.
Okay, so excellent. I think the main point here that you just made is that if you really want your business to be sustainable, you have to adopt a holistic approach and look at really every part of your business. So Louisa, how do you think then that this concept applies to hospitality?
Yeah, so I run our project here at the SRA. So the Sustainable Restaurant Association has been around for about the past 10 years now, and we run a membership platform which currently has about 11,000 restaurants. And when we say restaurants, we mean sort of anyone that serves food and drinks. So that's sort of caterers, pubs, universities, huge sort of chains up and down the countries to kind of small independents. And so, yeah, and that's called Food Made Good. And so when we talk about sustainability, we have sort of three different pillars: sourcing, society, and the environment. So in a similar way to what Kate was saying, we have a very kind of holistic approach to sustainability. We value sort of equally as much how well you treat your staff as to how much sort of meat you have in your menu. So in terms of those sourcing, society, and environment categories, yeah, that kind of looks at more veg and better meat, sort of sourcing organic and seasonal produce, looking at your fish supplies and making sure that they're responsible, and supporting kind of global farmers. In terms of society, that includes kind of nutrition, staff welfare, your community impact, and the environment being sort of the amount of food and plastic that you waste and the kind of energy that's fueling your operations. So yeah, we've kind of, we have that really holistic approach that we've kind of applied to hospitality, and those 10 areas have kind of been the main way that our member sites, I guess, monitor their sustainability. So yeah.
Okay, and I would be interested to know how practically you achieve that. How do you work with restaurants and venues to be, you know, to help them being more sustainable?
Yeah, sure. So I guess in normal times, slightly different, but we're most known for having our sustainability rating. So we rate restaurants on a 1, 2, and a 3-star basis. We are very known for having a big flashy award ceremony, normally this time of year, where all of our restaurants kind of compete up against each other on all of these different sustainability awards. We also have an amazing sort of online community. I call it a sort of sustainable Facebook, where you have members such as Nando's talking to members such as Pizza Hut on all sorts of different sustainability topics. And for us, that community really is the kind of hub of sharing each other's kind of challenges and successes between each other. So there's a whole load of different things that we do with members, all naturally evolving during COVID.
Excellent. Okay, so I would like then now to move on to the venues to see how, you know, practically how what they do, how they approach sustainability. And I would like to start from Nathan. So can you tell us a little bit about your approach at Speaking Code? What do you do to be more sustainable? What's your philosophy?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So yeah, we're only a small venue here in Manchester. We seat 45 people. We're entirely vegan. So everything we do is plant-based. And basically we took the approach of trying to maximize every product that comes through the building, but it stretches further than that too. So everybody that we choose to work with, whether it's suppliers or distributors, we really try to make sure that the connection is not only mutually beneficial for our core values, but also that they align with the way that we set out to be as well in this bar. So we stretched it out into a community focus too. So we kind of, I guess we try to have a positive impact on the community around us as well. So we created a Facebook group called the Waste Man of Manchester Bars, and it really is about sharing product and anything that may still have value to other people. So for example, if you're using glass bottles, you know, you could go through 50 to 300 a night, and it's really about seeing if anybody else can actually find value in that, whether somebody pre-batches cocktails or whether it's somebody who's a candle maker and they want to use that to glass cut, or whether they want to make glassware. Really about trying to find creative ways to share, as Louisa said, and maximize everything that comes through the building.
Sorry, could you repeat the name of the Facebook group? Because I think it's an amazing idea, and a lot of people that are following this session will be interested, I think.
Yeah, sure. It's called Waste Man of Manchester Bars, and it really just came from, we already have community groups here in Manchester with thousands and thousands of people, and it's used for many different things. But really, I wanted to try and create a central hub where people can share those products that may still have value to somebody else. And I'm sure if anybody wants to start their own community groups in different cities in the UK or around the world, feel free to give me a shout for any tips and advice. And I'd also love to be involved in that. I only created this for Manchester, but I'd also happily help out if anybody else wants to do something similar, you know.
Has anyone contacted you about this at all so far, or people have been too busy with COVID-19?
No, you get various people, companies coming through that group, and it can be bartenders, chefs, even waste and recycling companies as well, which is great because that's exactly the target audience. I guess I'm still a bartender at heart, even though I have my venue now and I'm in operations, but I'm still here 5 days of the week. So I'm always thinking of practical solutions with the bartenders to maximize those products. So it really was just to help other people who are in the similar line of work to us and do what we do day in, day out. But also it can spread out further than this as well. It can spread out from hospitality. But it's been great to see a lot of brands pick up on this group and come forward and have some suggestions for maybe events and things like that, but also waste and recycling companies. And I'm sure we'll get onto the topic of waste and recycling a little bit later on, but I think it's great for a bartender to be able to connect with people like this so we can figure out what happens after we use the product.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Nathan. I have more questions for you, but I think we'll give a little bit of space for the others, and then we'll get back to you. And please, people, do remember that we are taking questions from the floor, from the audience. So keep them coming. Just keep asking questions, and then I will make sure that I'll report them to our guests. So let's move on to Jonathan. Your perspective is a little bit different from that of Nathan in the sense that you're managing multiple sites and hotels. So can you tell us a little bit about Red Carnation, first of all, and what's your approach to sustainability with that?
Thanks, Jacopo. Good afternoon, all. Yes, so Red Carnation Hotels is a collection of 20 hotels which are global. We have hotels in Europe, in Africa and America. And we're owned by the Travel Corporation, which is an enormous company. And they have a separate division called the Tread Right Foundation, which is the part of the business which gives back in addition to all of the other brands. So I'm very lucky that it is a family-owned and run business, and certainly at the core of all we do is sustainability. And I think just picking up from what Kate said, in that it shouldn't just be something that's there on the side. We try and put that throughout the whole of the business that we do, from every part, that we are very much doing the right thing. And there are so many spin-offs from that. I mean, morally, I feel good to be part of a company that cares about this subject. But certainly the 2,500 people we have, many of which I think join and stay with us because they realise the importance that we take. The one or two initiatives that we do, which again I'm very proud of, and one to mention perhaps is that we give our employees globally 2 full paid days, this is outside of their holiday period, to go and work a charity of their choice. So they take that day and they go and do what they would like for that charity. And I think from a well-being perspective, it's huge. And the energy that's created, the buzz that's created, the talk, everybody listening today has a preferred charity, something that belongs to them. And the fact that you're given that opportunity to go and do that, I think is huge and is a part of our sustainability and our well-being that we do. I don't know how much you want me to talk now, Jacopo, as to advance, but we look after all business, from our food waste management to energy consumption, our single-use plastics. It's absolute throughout all of our hotels.
I'm definitely going to ask you about your waste management afterwards, but I actually have a question about the your charitable days, which is a very interesting initiative. Do you have any examples of what your employees have done over those days, and do they normally have to report to you what they do, or do they just do it voluntarily? Well, how does it work?
They need to be booked in advance, and you can't just wake up one morning and say I'm going to do it, so it has to be agreed. But we strongly encourage each employee to take these 2 days. So if people need help as to a charity they want to do, we've got lots of support. We as a company look after and contribute towards the Starlight Foundation to Great Ormond Street and many other charities around the globe where our hotels are. So they always need some help, be it a marathon running weekend to help for the Starlight Foundation, or Great Ormond Street being an example. We do beach litter clearing in our properties in South Africa, which are next to the beaches. So we're certainly very prepared to come up with ideas for people. But I think where it works best is where somebody knows of a charity because a friend, a relative, a friend's friend has got an issue, and they can go and give something back to that particular charity, which hits the chords for that person. And we've had this now for the last 5-6 years. When we started, we had about a 23% take up. Last year, 2019, finishing off, we got up to 93% of our employees took their 2 days off. And yes, do some people take advantage of it? Is it absolutely 100% check from us? No, it's not. But we've got a very accurate way of doing it. And I think you've got to have a bit of trust and honesty within your teams to be doing the right thing. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. So with some questions from the floor already coming in. So I would like to move on to Alessio for now, and then we'll go back to you, Jonathan, for the food waste. Alessio, so the concept of Mercato Metropolitano is very, very interesting. I would like you to tell us a little bit about your manifesto and how sustainability informs what your manifesto is all about.
Thank you, Jacopo. So, at Mercato Metropolitano, we started in 2016 in London, looking at running, if you like, food markets based on the sustainability. So if you look at the past, company used to solely maximize what was the sharing profit for the shareholders, if you like, but in 2020, we believe that a company should aim at the triple bottom line of a sustainable business, which is be economically sustainable, of course, being a for-profit company, as well as socially sustainable and environmentally sustainable. So the triple bottom line is for us the aim of our activities. We started to look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, we are part of the United Nations program, and in the idea of contributing to that, we create the manifesto. The manifesto is the condensation of the shared values that we believe here in Mercato we try to promote through across our sites and through our activities. And the idea is to contribute in a neutral or positive impact to this bottom line. So be economically sustainable, not only for the business, but for all our traders. Try to tackle environmental issues, so through food waste, the free plastic policy, and create communities and act on the local social issues. So the idea was to condensate our manifesto, which is made out of 7 points, like the right to food, the protecting the environment, food as it should be, empowering cities, and gives tool to the wider community to understand what is sustainable or related to food.
Thanks very much. So we have an interesting question from the audience. So I will go back to Jonathan, if you guys don't mind, and ask about your food waste policies, and then open it to all of you and see, try to understand a little bit more about food waste and waste in general. So Jonathan, can you tell us a little bit?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, I had absolutely no idea how much food waste we had within our hotels. And the reason I didn't know is because we didn't measure it. And I believe unless you measure something, you never really know what you're throwing away or what the overall wastage is. So we got very busy, and there are various companies out there that have the food waste management schemes. I'm not saying any better than any others, but we chose Winnow, who we've been very happy with. And they've installed into all of our kitchens a camera which has the bin, and obviously the food waste is weighed. But the idea of the camera is it also tells you and identifies what type of food it is that is being thrown away. And when we started this, it's slightly less than 2 years ago, and clearly the last 6 months or so has knocked this in terms of our measurement for it. But we were way above 30% in terms of overall waste being food. So we started to tackle and we started to see how many kilograms of wasted food we were actually throwing away, and specifically what items of food we were doing. And we found items such as bakery were perhaps the biggest, bread, rolls, and the different loaves of bread that we did. So we used this as a tool, not to change our standards and not to not offer everything to a guest, but we started to cut back and see where we could use less and throw away less, more from it. So today, to fast track this, across the board, it is slightly different in all of our hotels, but our food waste now stands at around 28% of all waste. What we've managed to do is, during 2019 on 2018, we took 2% of our food cost, and that 2% has more than paid for the cost, the annual cost of employing this food waste management scheme. So again, it's a win-win. We're throwing away less food. The monies that we're doing is being paid, some obviously to the company, but it's given a realization now. I mean, we don't use it as a tool to beat chefs up and say, you're using this, or our waiting staff. It's a management tool for us all to become better and to focus on what we're doing. And we now have the buy-in of all of our teams. In fact, it's quite exciting. I'm pretty bad, but pretty good in other ways of making it a little bit competitive. We look at where we can do better, who's doing what, and how it all works. And again, it isn't something on a side now, it's part of our culture. Food waste management is something we focus on, and how can we get better with doing it. And there's no doubt at all we can still do better. I don't think you ever sit back and go, it's job done. But where we were 2 years ago to where we are today, in terms of what we buy, what we use, what we throw out, is a whole lot better. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And I think, again, proud of the cost saving, proud of what we're doing there. But again, it's right for the world. It's, you know, we live in a world where far too much is thrown away, too much waste. And to know that we're doing something about that on the food angle, I think is really important. And again, on the food, just moving aside slightly, we try and buy, like any decent business should be today, things that are within a local radius of our hotels. We shouldn't be buying water from Fiji and bringing that through, in my opinion. We've got to be looking at sustainability as to where we buy our fish, our meats, fruit and veg. And I think, again, any good company, any company that really cares, is making sure they do that today.
Absolutely. And I think you also raised an important topic, which is the fact that being sustainable doesn't necessarily mean that you need to invest money, and that's just a waste investment. You know, so many times it's about saving money. But we'll go back to this point. So one of the questions that we got from the audience was mainly aimed at Alessio and Jonathan, but I actually think that it's for everyone. So I would like to hear what you guys have to say about this. So how have changes in demand and restrictions due to COVID-19 impacted your food waste, and how are you managing this change? So I guess we can actually expand this question. You know, obviously, due to COVID-19 and then, you know, the lockdown and social distancing, there are in some cases perhaps the sustainability has become not as prominent an issue as it was before. You know, we're using single-use face masks. People throw them on the floor. We use very small hand sanitizer bottles, and just we get rid of them afterwards. So I guess, yeah. But how do you manage waste in a time where you are expected to use single-use menus? So who wants to start with this? I don't know, Nathan. Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think for me specifically, I only have a small venue, and we've always tried to maximize everything that came through the door anyways. So in terms of food waste and things like, we really don't produce that much food waste, because we try to at least get 3 or 4 uses out of everything that comes through the door. And we only have a small food menu. But in terms of products, I think this is where the opportunity to use and to kind of connect with the community around you really helps, because that way, if there's anything that you struggle to actually get, or if there's anything that you find is becoming useful, that's where you can connect with the community around you to share produce. And I'll give an example of that. There are bars that, close by to me use a lot of orange peels for garnishes for cocktails, and then they have leftover oranges. And it's only a small trip for me to pick up those oranges, and then I can use them to juice for the rest of the week. And that way it saves me a cost, but it also allows for them to not throw anything away, and I can use that and maximize that. And same for me too, if I have anything like sanitizer bottles or anything that you say that's small, and I might think might not be value to me, could be value to somebody else. So I'd always say use that community outlet and central hub to try to find ways to share and minimize waste as much as possible.
Great, thank you very much. Alessio, do you have any input on this?
Well, for us, running at the moment 2 sites with about 60 food traders has been a bit of a challenge to understand the reduction in footfall. In fact, due to the current restriction, we can allow as many people as we can sit in the venue. So for us, it's been a value engineering exercise on each trader menu, try to reduce obviously their weekly orders from the suppliers, so reducing the potential risk of throwing away food, as well as create menus for somehow they could reuse what Jonathan was mentioning as a food waste, something that can be reused within the menu. So try to exploit as much as possible of the actual weekly order, but has been challenging in terms of more related to the decreasing of business rather than the actual food waste.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan, what's your take on this?
I think you're all very careful today. We're not using COVID now as an excuse not to be sustainable. I do appreciate those masks, as you say, those little sanitizer bottles, etc. are there. They're disgusting, and we need to move on from that as soon as we can. But I think from the certainly mid to long term, if we really want to be in the game, if we really want to be chosen as a first choice by customers, by guests, we better get on the sustainability and understand the importance of it, and make sure that we're not just talking about it, we are doing it. So I just would say, obviously these are horrible times at the moment. It's difficult for hospitality. I certainly, in my 40 years of being in this business, I've never ever had times like this before where we've been forced to close hotels. I operate 6 hotels in central London. It's just horrible at the moment. There's no occupancy at all, etc. But that doesn't mean we should be taking away our focus on this hugely important subject. And if we look at food that I've been talking about now in our London properties, we've shortened the menus and we've got less guests anyway. So we haven't got the huge, extensive a la carte menu. It's still choice, etc. But we've got a bit less of it. Our property in Dorset, our Country House Hotel, has never been busier. It's run 100% ever since July the 4th, and people enjoy stay vacation. So I think you adjust like that. So I think for this, I just think people have got to understand the importance of sustainability and not just sit there and go, well, it's COVID, nothing I can do. It's never been a more important time to be getting this right, getting your strategies and being right on this particular subject.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely agree. So COVID shouldn't really be an excuse. But I want to hear from Kate and Louise as well. So Kate, what do you think about this?
For sure. I think COVID has been a really challenging time and continues to be an increasingly challenging time, especially for the hospitality industry. But it's also providing an opportunity for a reset, to take a step back and to think about the kind of business that you want to create, that you want to take forward. How do you operate and what do you value? And I think those kind of are really important questions as we move into a society that is more aware, more conscious, that wants to align its values with where it eats and the food it buys and the waste that happens. I think there's far more awareness of the impact that we have. And I think just COVID-19 on the impact on carbon emissions, or the fact that we're all staying still, or we're ordering takeaway or things like that. I think there's a real opportunity for us all to take a step back and think, how do we want to move forward, especially if this mass disruption it's probably not the last time that we'll be disrupted in this way, especially if the climate crisis continues in the same vein that it does.
Interesting approach to see this as an opportunity to reset. It's definitely something to think about. Louisa?
Yeah, just to follow on there, I guess food waste specifically has always been kind of one of the biggest sustainability challenges for hospitality. I think pre-COVID, UK hospitality was responsible for about 10% of the whole of the UK's food waste. It is one of the biggest things we have to tackle as an industry. And we did some research at the start of lockdown with Just Eat, actually, which showed how these kind of fluctuations in footfall are completely correlating with increased fluctuations in food waste. We've seen across our membership base that, as you were saying, Jonathan, this kind of reduced menu offering has been a real success for allowing restaurants to minimise the amount of food waste that they are producing. For a plethora of reasons, and by making sure that those reduced menus also take this real sort of nose to tail approach, making sure that you're sort of using the offcuts of this and that in other dishes and freezing that and saving that for later, etc. So yeah, we are already seeing this quite exciting sort of revamp of a lot of menus, and food waste is being a real core part of that. I guess something else that we very much encouraging our members to do, and we've seen take up a lot, is sort of when there are these fluctuations in waste, things like redistribution, partners like Olio and Too Good To Go are really good platforms to deal with those fluctuations in waste. But I guess our message is always, if you are having those kind of regular streams of food waste, get back to the root cause of why they're happening in the first place. You know, as you were saying there, Jonathan, about sort of auditing, we're big fans of an old audit here at the SRA. Get out a pen and paper, weigh some bin bags and work out exactly where those streams of waste are coming from. If you are a bigger business, using platforms like Winnow, sort of clever technology can also play a really crucial role. But sort of understanding what the causes are of your food waste, how regularly they're happening, and having a real sort of honest conversation of why they're happening and who in the business can be responsible for integrating that waste into sort of other aspects of your operation to ideally eliminate it as much as possible. So yeah, food waste is definitely not going away and has to be something that we sort of tackle as we have this opportunity to rethink our operations as we sort of come out of this slightly scary period.
Absolutely. And you, Lisa, you mentioned Olio, which I just recently started using, and it's the same concept as Nathan's Facebook group, basically. Yeah. Just on a larger scale. If I'm not mistaken, I think one large retailer has started using Olio recently.
Yeah, if we're allowed to shout about that, they just released that information, I think, last week. It's a really exciting time for them. Yeah, they're a supplier member of ours, and quite a lot of our members have been increasingly using Olio over the past couple of months, especially. So yeah, we're big fans.
Yeah, definitely a good, an interesting tool. Before we move on to the next question, Louise and Kate, people have asked how they can become part of your organization. So, Louise, if you want to start, just quickly, just say what people can do to be part of it.
Yeah, sure. Go to foodmadegood.org and click on join us. We'd love people to sort of join our community. We do not have a kind of entry code. We are very much a kind of please join our journey, join our community regardless of where you are on your sustainability journey. As I say, we have sort of these 3-star members. We have people that are businesses that are just commencing on that roadmap. So yeah, head over to foodmadegood.org. That's the name of our membership program, and we'd be delighted to continue expanding our community.
Okay, great. Kate?
Yeah, and just to shout out to Too Good To Go and Winnow, who are both B Corps as well. So this is nice shout out to them. So bcorporation.uk, the letter B, and on there you can kind of flick through and learn a little bit more about the movement. And if you go to /certification, you can understand how you can use the assessment tool. And again, it's free for anyone to use. It's kind of a comprehensive assessment around every area of your business. And yeah, if you certify, again, one of the themes I think has been really nice is coming up is the idea of community and learning and sharing from each other. And there's definitely that within the B Corp community as well. So there's lots of learning and sharing that takes place. And I'll put the link in the chat, and I'm sure, Louisa, you can do that too, so everyone can directly check out the websites.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question, which is, I think, a very, very important one that can really, really help venues to take the first step without really much effort, to be fair. So the question is, how important is a spirit or wine brand sustainability to the decision-making process? I guess the buying, the purchasing decision-making process. Would a brand stand out if it was championing this? It's a question for all venues, but I do think that this is really an area where a venue can really become a lot more sustainable, basically by doing nothing, just by changing its purchasing behavior. Shall we start with Alessio? What do you think?
So as a part of the company policy, engaging with a small producer and an artisan, they all need to go through an onboarding process. Through the onboarding process, we channel them towards more sustainable way of purchase, not only food, but also beverage. And in order to guide them, we started from which were on the market really the main characteristic that either a supplier or a producer should have. So we started from identifying what in England the main producer certification. We've been working, Luis, also with the SRA for a couple of years, try to identify all those certifications, and we create a kind of framework within which all the traders, they can actually purchase their own items. We run through traceability checks, so we need to understand where all the food comes from, and again, the food should be as natural as possible, so we always try to emphasize the importance of having natural ingredients. In all of it, we all try to produce as much as possible in-house, so we can control not only the traceability and the provenance of the ingredients, but also the quality. So this is more or less what we are trying to do, starting from the bottom of our chain.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Please, everyone who is listening, remember to enter the poll so that we know what's your approach to sustainability, what you have been doing so far. We'll move on to Jonathan now.
Yeah, I haven't got huge amounts more to add than Alicia has, but I think we're wrong if we don't think that our customers and guests don't care about this subject. We have more people in our restaurants, our bars today, asking us where we source our food, our drinks, etc. from. So I think, again, it's excellent business practice as well to be buying locally, sustainable, and I think, again, your people side of it, the people serving, our team members enjoy the fact that we're buying that locally. So I think we've got procurement people. The remap for myself is that we buy where we can. I mean, we need to buy champagne from France, don't we? But where you can be buying locally, and particularly the food side of things, we very much do so.
Okay, Nathan?
Yeah, it's a good question, this one. And I suppose from a small venue's perspective, it's really important that we set our stall out since day one. We have a reduce, reuse, recycle, refuse, repurpose approach as much as possible, where possible. And it's really important that anybody who comes through our door would like to talk about a brand partnership understands who we are at our core value, so then that we can connect with them a little bit better. Anything that they can do from their end to show us that they practice or they have sustainable practices within their workplace, from everything from production to how they treat their staff, definitely earns points in our book and makes us kind of consider working with these guys a little bit more. I'd have to give an example, if I can, to one brand that we've been working with, Sipsmith Gin, just to give an example. So we've been speaking for a little while now about what kind of thing we can collaborate on or how we can work together. So they put forward and explain to us the kind of practices that they implement into their workspace. And since it kind of aligns with our core values, we're much more likely to collaborate together on something that's a little bit bigger and kind of work on projects that benefit both of us. So we've created a spent botanical bitters series with Sipsmith, and especially if you find a brand that works with you in that way and aligns with your core values, as I said, you're much more likely to collaborate in the future and do some I know, cool things that you can showcase on your bar, like bespoke bitters or maybe a liqueur collaboration and things like that. And really, it's a great avenue to kind of create cool things to showcase at your bar when you get better partnerships that way. But yeah, so from a small bar's perspective, we just set our stall out from day one. And it's, I guess, in terms of framework, it's really just on a vocal basis, and we try to work with all suppliers and distributors, whether it's fruit and veg or their glassware suppliers or their cleaning chemical suppliers, things like that. You really want to make sure that they all kind of align with your core values, and they have an environmental, I guess, responsibility department. And you find in most cases that they will as well. So anybody who you work with distributor-wise, especially if they're a large company that distribute nationally, they will have a department that focus on environmental responsibility. And all it takes is just a small email just to tap into that and find out what they do to benefit the environment. And then you're already off to a good start if you can connect with those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to actually make an extra point for the more skeptical venues and businesses. So there are plenty of data. I don't have the actual data with me now, but I'm sure you can all Google it. The rises of ethical consumers is there. The segment is just growing, and it happens to be a very young segment. So that's going to be just larger and larger over the coming years. So even if that's not yet your part of your values, that being more sustainable will definitely pay off in the future, and you will probably discover the benefits for yourself. Louisa, do you have anything to add to this in terms of working with what people might think might be the right suppliers, or those that actually embrace sustainability values?
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on your comment there about kind of consumer habits, pretty fresh off the press, this morning we've released some more research which basically suggests that about 75% of consumers are happy to pay just that little bit more to ensure that the meals that they are eating out are that bit more sustainable. So this is post-COVID or now during COVID research that's coming out to sort of, really evidence check that point that this kind of ethical demand for dining out is completely on the rise. And then to your point there about kind of, I guess, bars explicitly and trying to understand more about your supply chains. We work with Pernod Ricard and wrote a really exciting e-learn with them during lockdown, which is all about kind of understanding more about the suppliers that you work with and how to operate a more sustainable bar. And yeah, to Nathan's comment there, it is often just like the quick email of kind of showing that you as a business are interested in supporting their business ethos and tapping into what those kind of projects are that your suppliers are working on at the moment. Sadly, businesses won't often sort of have that front of mind until you put your sort of arm out there to say we are a business that cares about your sustainability ethos. So please provide us with more information, provide us with updates, because that's why we are supporting you as a business. So yeah, it's often just that quick email to sort of say what's going on at the moment in terms of sustainability. We'd love to learn more about that and champion that and tell all of our other employees about that so that they can shout about that to all of our diners.
Great. 75% is a remarkable figure. I guess people can just check on your website, right, to find these figures.
Yeah. If you just it's come out in the Guardian, so if you pop into the Guardian Sustainable Restaurant Association, it should be up there. Yeah, right now.
Okay, excellent. And Kate?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that I found, and I think this kind of comes to it, is if you're not articulating your values or what you're doing, what you believe in, often that won't become a consideration in the way that you choose things. So being able to send that email to kind of extend that hand or branch or email, as Louisa said, it enables you to tap into deeper relationships with suppliers and get to know them on levels that potentially you wouldn't have had before, but also just to ask them more questions in the same way as we as citizens need to ask more questions about the provenance of our food and where we buy things from, I think that will also increase the need to be able to understand the provenance of your food that you're purchasing, and how it's getting to you and things like that. And especially with an increased world of Brexit and a lot of discussion about chlorinated chicken, people are interested in this stuff and they want to know. And so if you're able to already answer the question before people ask it, it's going to be really important. But yeah, I do think we all as people, as humans, need to ask more questions of the businesses and the organisations that we decide to spend our money from. And you'll be surprised by some of the answers and quite shocked by the others.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kate. One listener was wondering whether the research that you, Lisa, mentioned show links towards cocktail or drink sales, or it's just food?
It didn't explicitly look at alcohol or kind of, cocktails. Something that I thought it would be quite interesting to talk about is the role of citrus. And we're talking here about kind of sort of local produce, and for a bar, and it being Global Bar Week, kind of this reliance on citrus as our kind of main flavouring for every drink. Nathan, I'm sure you've got some interesting comments on this, but I think for the bar world, we need to talk about citrus more. Like, it's such a interesting topic. When was the last time you went and ordered a drink in a bar and you weren't given just a sort of wedge of lime or lemon or orange just for the sake of it? And it's also about the kind of routes that citrus has gone down, any period sort of that isn't January to March, it's probably come from South America here in the UK. And is that something we need to start asking ourselves? Should we be accepting a wedge of orange with our gin and tonic in sort of September? Probably not. And where we can rely on kind of certification bodies, people like Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, when we do have to source out of season. For the bar industry, citrus in particular, I think is a really interesting topic that we need to be talking more about, and looking at those kind of local seasonal garnishings instead of necessarily relying on citrus. What's so bad about sort of a lovely bit of British herbs or some stone fruit or something that's sort of available this time of year?
Yeah, if you're making a very interesting point, which I think is well, I'm going to ask you, Nathan, your take on this, because as you know, as a bartender, you definitely have something to say. But before that, I was wondering whether either you, Louise, or Kate have any thoughts about the relatively recent trend for breweries to release one-off beers with a lot of very exotic ingredients. Mangoes or a lot of citrus, or has this thing ever crossed your mind as a thing that has sustainability implications?
Well, we've got some. I mean, Toast Ale is a B Corp that its sole purpose is to look at food waste, and so it makes beer from bread and does lots of different collaborations with lots of organisations. I think they've just launched one with Brewdog, but want to encourage as many people as possible. So in a different vein, a collaboration of a specialty beer, but tackling food waste is really great. And I think they've got some ideas up their sleeves for next year as well. I think, we need to keep the opportunity that food waste has in mind. There's, being able to look at maybe it's the rind of the citrus fruit that's being ordered all the time, to make sure that can be something that goes into something positive and it isn't just wasted. But yeah, I haven't got any other direct experience with kind of specialty beers that are based on non-seasonable fruit.
I think this is probably a topic for a whole other seminar, webinar. So we'll think about that. Nathan, what's your so what do you think about the use of citrus in drinks?
I also agree that this could be an entirely new seminar as well, just based on citrus fruits. But I had a debate about this a little while ago. So I know we've spoken before, and I went to an event once. It was a seminar, and there was a panel, and one of the debates was a daiquiri is a daiquiri, and a daiquiri needs lime. And I never debated that, but what I debated was innovation and new cocktails in a modern era should be looking at other uses. And I know that now it's like, again, it's another golden era of bartending where people are being way more innovative than you can even imagine. And what's great to see is a lot of brands pre-COVID were doing a lot of cocktail competitions. And I know there's a lot of online cocktail competitions as well with sustainability in mind, and really trying to get people to think a little bit differently about how they produce cocktails. And I think what's really important is if you have a product and trying to use all parts, I think one of the best or one of the most forward-thinking, I guess, ways right now is a lot of chefs and bartenders are collaborating to create food dishes or cocktails by using all parts and crossing them over between bar and kitchen. So I really believe that's a good way forward. But in terms of citrus itself, you know, just go back to the guys who did and started Trash Tiki. Nobody had ever heard of a citrus stock before that, but now we use it over here. It's a great tool, you know, to we make our own chinotto as well from offcuts of citrus, and there's about 4 or 5 different things that we actually make. We can make our own cola with offcuts of citrus. We can make citrus stock with offcuts of citrus, and we're talking 20 lemons can extend us to 3 liters of a citrus stock, which would last us, you know, a very long time actually on a bar like this. And I really feel like it's important for innovation of cocktail menus, but it also adds a little bit of perceived value as well to guest experience. When you can create something new like that and people sit down and experience a cocktail with more homemade ingredients, more sustainability thinking in mind, less citrus, and a little bit more of a story to tell, because we all know what it's like to go to a bar and you get the history of a certain whiskey that's in your cocktail, but how much better is it that the story is actually about the homemade product or about the reusability of everything that you have in your bar, you know? So I think it's important that bartenders do think of innovation without citrus.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very interesting. And yes, I think this would probably deserve an entire webinar. There is still so much that we want to talk about. So before we move on to the next thing, please, people, remember to fill in the poll. If you haven't done it yet, enter it, because we're going to release the results soon. So we were talking about communication a minute ago, and when brands communicate about their sustainability initiatives, the risk of greenwashing is always behind the corner. And we were talking about this actually with all of you last week, but especially with Jonathan. So I would like to go back to you and hear your take on this.
Thanks, Jacopo. Yeah, I think we do need to be very careful, certainly as a hotelier, that we're not bragging about what we're doing for sustainability without the facts. And certainly in the last year or so, we've been very sure before we start saying we've achieved this, that, and the other, that we have the facts to substantiate that. So be it our renewable electricity sources that we are now signed up for. I think it's important, if you're doing that, you have a goal, you have a target, and you know what that is. So we have committed by 2023 to be getting at least 50% of our renewable electricity from that. And by 2025, we want to have everything from that. But I think one has to work from targets. They have to be measured, they have to be audited, and they have to be accurate. I think hoteliers and restaurateurs have been far too liberal with the words of what they're achieving, what they're doing, without actually having the facts. So there are many examples, but I think going forwards now, we're racing through 2020. We'll be pleased to see the back of 2020, but I think as we go forwards, people are going to have the facts. Otherwise, you're going to look pretty stupid when you are questioned, when you are asked about specific subjects, if you haven't really got the facts to hand.
So is there anyone else that wants to comment on this? I mean, is there still room for greenwashing in 2020, or are consumers already, know where to spot it and how to spot it? Who wants to say something about this? Kate, do you have a take on this?
Yeah, I think gosh, it's a big subject. I think the basis of B Corp is being able to measure, right? To be able to understand your impact, to understand what you're doing as an organization, and being able to therefore probably reduce what you're doing, and that will have a ongoing impact on your operations and everything like that. I think we need to be accountable, and we need to be transparent about it as well. So I think we are racing towards a climate crisis, or we've already started to be in a climate crisis, and big, bold, ambitious targets are exactly what we need to create the change that is so important. And people are making a lot of declarations about net zero by 2030 or whatever that is, and I think actually a lot of people don't know how they're going to get there, and that's okay to some extent, as long as the intention behind it is understanding that they're going to have to do something quite strategic and quite big, and a lot of the innovation, it hasn't been scaled yet, but it will be, and I think the most important thing is to set those targets, be open about them, and if you try your hardest and you don't get there, then that's also fine. Like, be clear and honest about it. One of my favorite things about Innocent, the smoothie maker, they released a report, which was a brilliant report, and one of the things, and I keep drawing attention to this, they might kill me, but they don't air freight any of their fruit or their vegetables. It's a really big policy of them, but on one occasion they did, and they said, what we did, we hold our hands up, we air freighted a fruit to be able to meet some timelines for something. And actually, I have a lot more respect for them as an organization to say, do you know what, we have these rules, we have this kind of open target, and actually we didn't quite meet it this time. And that's what we need to get to. We need to be, so many businesses are so scared to fail, or so scared to reach out and say, we're not sure how we're going to get there, but who wants to come with me on that journey? And I think it's that need to come together as communities, as people on the same journey, saying, hey, look, why don't we work together and see how we can buy either more renewable energy, or shift our supply to this, or stop using plastic because of X, Y, and Z. If we're going to get to the place that we need to get, a community working together, best practice sharing is exactly the direction that we need to go into.
Thank you. And Alessio, I think you wanted to say something. I mean, you have a manifesto, so I think it's, I guess it's measurable for you as well.
Yeah, no, in reality is an interesting topic, and it's quite wide, because the communication on sustainable activities, it can be in a form of advertising for the business, which to me, it can be also seen as a greenwash exercise, while the majority of the people, they act in the background. So if you come to Mercato as a customer, you don't actually understand what's behind. All we do, we try to educate people, or we try to, let's say, play with our crowd, so not admitting perhaps plastic bottles in the market. Now, at the moment, during the COVID situation, we're still doing it, but we are dealing also with queuing systems and limitation on the business. But generally speaking, the security is also looking at the level of bottles, plastic bottles that step into the market. We try to hold it at the entrance, and a customer can take it back in this way. For the second time that the customer comes in our venue, will not bring a plastic bottle. So basically what we do, we use specified forum like this one to discuss about our sustainability, but it's not the main purpose of communication towards the general public. So that's the first one. And the second one, in terms of measuring the activities of each business, we are working, for example, with the Imperial College in London and the Fletcher in Boston, trying to measure the impact of our triple bottle line in each area. So the social, for example, impact that we have on the area, as well as the environmental impact, and put together will give us a measure of the shared value that we try to promote.
Okay, thank you very much, Alessio. Louise and Nathan, unless you have something else to add to this, we have probably a minute to if you want to add something, Nathan.
Yeah, sure. I agree with Kate completely about honesty and transparency. It's the approach that we've taken since day one, and it's really generated a loyal, I guess, clientele base for us. We get a lot of guests, a lot of brands, a lot of support who really appreciate what we try to do. And I would just really say try to be proactive instead of reactive, and always look to collaborate, and always look to find like-minded people, push yourself out there as much as possible and network. And it's really all about taking small steps. Don't think of it as an ocean that you just want to dip your toe into, just jump straight in. Find people who are like-minded and just take small steps. And it's much better to have 10 bars doing small things and 1 bar trying to take everything on their shoulders, you know?
Excellent. I think it's a great note to end this webinar. I think it is time for us to wrap up. It's been a very, very interesting conversation. I hope our audience thinks the same. So I'm just checking if we have the results of our poll. Second. So they're not coming through, so we'll be able to you'll be able to see the results when you see the recording of the webinar. So I would like to thank all our guests again, all our speakers. Thanks very much, Jonathan, Alessio, Nathan, Louise, and Kate for being with us today. This session, as I said, will be available to watch on demand straight after this. So don't forget also that this is just the start of a full week of events with Imbibe Live online and as part of Global Bar Week. So go on the website and check out the program. Thanks again, everyone, and see you soon.